And with that, I'm very happy to introduce Mr. Ken Jarris from NetApp for today's topic. Thanks for joining us, Ken, and please take it away.
Hey, thanks, Chris, and glad to be here. So appreciate the time. Let me make sure I have control. There we go. So today's topic that I was asked to talk about, if I can get this done right, is around Flash, and particularly around VDI. Best practices around this is, we're seeing VDI. To me, I'm seeing it as a resurgence of a topic. Companies that are working through this are seeing this as part of their transformation. We're seeing a lot of transformation today in IT, whether you want to call it software-defined data center, or whether you want to call this infrastructure 2.0, cloud computing, third platform I've heard, or private cloud. The desired outcomes are the same. It's that we're getting into be an efficient data center that can respond to the business needs and can provide a platform that can adapt to the growing business and adapt to where the business is going for in the future. So it needs to be nimble or agile to really respond to a dynamic business environment that is constantly changing, and a lot of that's because of the cloud. The cloud has actually put a lot of pressure on IT to be just as responsive around that. And when it comes to VDI, I'm really seeing this as it's a little background on me. I've been at NetApp now for 12 years. I'm seeing now probably around a third go around on VDI with a lot of different customers. Initially, everybody rushed to it right away to try and see if they could, do something in the virtualization space, and desktops seem to be a fairly easy target. Then they realized the cost of doing that was a little prohibitive, and it was mostly because of the infrastructure you had to do to provide the same type of desktop experience that end users have. And they continually evolve. As laptops evolve, they end up putting in SSDs, and so now that kind of raised the bar on a lot of things. So VDIs, I've seen first generation VDIs deployments, some successful, some not so successful. Sept kind of improved on some things that they learned from prior lessons. Oftentimes it involved putting in more spinning disks to ensure that we had proper I/O. And then that got into some cost factors, so it didn't get as broad depth. Nowadays, I'm seeing a resurgence of VDI, not so much around the cost of the desktop, but more for security. I see a lot around data center and data integrity, data security. The realization of what happens if I have to replace a lost laptop, for example. In some cases, a desktop. I've talked to customers where I'm not sure how they've done it, but they managed to have desktops walk out the door. Tend to see that more, I guess, in smaller businesses than larger enterprises, but it can be a common occurrence where what happens when that particular item is gone. So the drivers are really we're seeing around VDI now, and this is really applicable to any of the applications in the enterprise space, is though that the cost of SSDs are starting to drop. They're at a point now where SSDs it's not a matter of should I use Flash or does my workload really qualify for Flash? It's more a matter of when you're going to do Flash and leverage SSDs in your environment and in the infrastructure. The other factor of this is all Flash arrays are now making it easier to deploy. So it's a lot easier to get things stood up and move forward. And the other compelling event that's moving VDI forward in a lot of customer cases is the pressure to use alternate devices. Using tablets. I have some customers that do a BYO, bring your own device, or BYD, I guess you would call that, from that aspect. And so when you get a difference of hardware in those type of scenarios, you still have to have some consistency around the applications you're having your end users utilize in their day-to-day job. So VDI is a way to kind of level that playing field and give you an option to bring your own devices or move to a bring your own device type of scenario. I mentioned about loss of, the impact of data loss. So compliance and data management is also becoming crucial, a key factor of why people are resurrecting or looking at VDI once again. in some customers, it's because the data they have, they want to be a mobile workforce, but they don't want that data residing on that particular device. So they need to be able to provide them access to that data just to do their job. But at the same time, they want to ensure that the data, if they lose that device, or in the event that person leaves, it's easier for them to ensure that the data isn't leaving with them. So it makes it, so that's becoming more of a factor around VDI projects as well. And then that with that transformation, we're seeing more cloud computing putting pressure on the IT organization to also transform them to be like a cloud provider. Make it easier to get services, make it easier to do things as a IT organization and present the services out to the organization. Whether that be desktop as a service, whether it be IT as a service, there's a lot of as a service type of offerings or acronyms out there today. But either way, it's the idea that now the IT organization needs to be acting more like, you know, Amazon. AWS has been kind of the prime example. Microsoft has followed with Azure to some degree, to where it's just easy to get access to resources. And that whole model and mentality is now starting to permeate into this. And VDI becomes that kind of a crux around that. Now, some of the items that are limiting factors or kind of thought factors around making VDI successful is that you do have to meet the desktop expectation. You have laptops today that are deployed with SSDs or some type of flash for their hardware components. So performance is crucial. It has to be consistent performance. A lot of remote access desktops tend to fail or get bogged down because if they're trying to access remote resources, file shares, or other types of data that has a high latency, then the end user experience is diminished, and they're not willing to either A, put up with it anymore, or B, they're not willing to use that particular application because they know it's going to take longer to get access to it. So Flash is becoming a more crucial component to this, and really I think it's what's percolating and really moving forward a lot of VDI initiatives from that aspect. Now, just to help with that particular aspect, NetApp recently acquired a company, Solidfire, and their product offering, and added that to our portfolio. Solidfire was born out of the cloud. So it makes it a little bit different to begin with, in the sense that it was built by a group of people that had worked at a service provider providing services to the masses, and it was built with that mindset in mind of having to be massively scaled, in addition to highly responsive to a differing workload, and a workload that you don't know and don't have expectations as to what to come in with. It has to be dynamic and be able to respond to that. And at the same time, because of that coming out of the cloud and coming from a service provider background, it's designed to deal with mixed workloads. Again, in that type of environment, you have no idea what type of workload you have. And while in a private cloud situation, an internal type of infrastructure, we tend to think about, you know, what's the workload we're going to put on here. We kind of want to know about that in order to size this properly. Oftentimes, we don't know. We're going in blind. We make guesses as to what the workload is going to be. So this type of infrastructure and component allows us to know that it's designed to handle multiple workloads. I can throw different things at it, and it's still going to be just as responsive as if it was a single workload running on the device. And at the same time, that dynamic infrastructure means that I need to be able to handle scaling. I can go up, or more importantly, I can go down. What happens if I retire workloads? I may have a business line that comes online, and it doesn't quite pan out. Unfortunately, you take risks inside a business organization. You think something's going to be wildly successful. And in some cases, you hit it out of the park. Other cases, you hit a foul ball, and you cut your losses, and you go from there. So the ability for us to have that infrastructure be dynamic, to where I can spin up resources as necessary, but also take them back away and maybe reutilize those, is just as crucial to a next generation data center as anything else. And really, this is really what we're enabling, is that next generation data center to be your own cloud provider to your own organization is what it comes down to. So building on Solidfire, the particular for VDI is that I can now consolidate these workloads. Typically what we're seeing in the VDI space is oftentimes solutions that are doing a single single point. They're only doing workloads just for VDI. And there's some customers that decide, yes, I'm just going to have a dedicated infrastructure for VDI. However, when you look at, so like example, if you use, for example, the service providers that are doing VDI offerings to the public, they are not doing a dedicated workload space for VDI. They actually are doing mixed workloads with everything else that they're running on their environment, and they're utilizing the most out of their assets as they can to get those guarantees. So they need to be able to provide that guarantee to not just the VDI environment, to any other workload they put on there. That's one of the things that Solidfire does very well. And I'm not sure my automation is working too well, but we'll let this build. So the intention of this is that now I can guarantee my quality of service to any of the workloads I put on this, including VDI, but I could also put database workloads on the same platform and guarantee I'm going to have performance to every application I put on the array, whether or not it's single task or multitask. And the ability to respond is even greater than ever, and it's a need for the next generation data center. So Solidfire, if you want to look at it in a nutshell, is the all-flash storage platform for the next generation data center, providing your scale-out capability. We'll talk about that shortly. Self-healing, that's the other part of this, is it's a little different structure that does self-healing, which allows me to remove assets from the infrastructure and redeploy those if I need to. But the idea is now I don't have to have everything dedicated to a particular workload or particular infrastructure. I can move things around and remove nodes out of the cluster and actually deploy those as a different cluster from different areas. The guaranteed quality of service really is crucial for our VDI infrastructure these days. Again, users expect the same experience in a VDI deployment as they do with a desktop. So when you get to that point, we end up with needing to guarantee that type of experience. The other thing about making this a successful service is ability to automate the process as well. If I can put out there a pool of desktops and users can connect to them, but more importantly, the intention is that I can actually spin up those resources based upon an automated request. So if I really need a new desktop, I could actually go in and submit that myself, have it generated and automatically assigned to me if I'm doing persistent desktops, or if I'm doing non-persistent desktops, it's just a matter of how do I help the user automate and get their particular access done faster than in the past. And of course, we want to make things efficient. So the efficiencies that you may be familiar with from NetApp in the past with our ONTAP product line is just as crucial and just as available in this particular platform as they are on the ONTAP product line you might be familiar with from us today. So let's talk a little bit about scale-out capability. The idea is now I can start small. So that's the other thing about VDI projects in the past. First generation, even second generation, oftentimes it started with a small subset. It wasn't able to scale out because the cost of that or the dynamics of that particular scale-out solution didn't allow for it to be enterprise-wide. What I can do with this particular platform now is I can actually do a linear and nonlinear scale support. So I have a performance metric that we provide on each of our platforms with Solidfire that we guarantee. So we can guarantee you 200,000 IOPS and 58 terabytes for this particular building block. I can add a smaller building block if all I need is another additional workload of up to 250,000 IOPS. So I can actually scale this out with different size components, and I can mix and match those as I see fit as my workload determines that. So I can continue to grow and build this out and expand or contract without disruption to the environment. So I can remove nodes from this particular environment without having to have a disruption of service to the end user, which is just as crucial these days, particularly with VDI. Some of the cases, I've been working with some healthcare customers recently around VDI that are looking at this for patient care. So, the nurses, the doctors in the hospitals that are using a desktop today, they're looking at moving that whole thing to a virtual desktop. Well, when you're collecting or looking at, say, EKG data, that type of desktop needs to be available no matter what. If I have a 5-minute gap in an EKG scan, that data stream is something that 5 minutes is a big difference. Even a minute is a difference in that type of a workload. So the ability for us to be able to dynamically grow and add to the infrastructure is crucial when you look at that type of workload in a VDI space. Other VDI desktops, same thing. I have other customers that have looked at and deployed VDI for call centers. When you have someone sitting there idle on the phone and their desktop's not responding, that's money. That's money that's ticking away for every minute they're on the phone. That's a ticker that's running through somebody's budget line for how long those calls are being handled. So the ability for us to dynamically add capability for the workload, and again, if we decide to contract something, I can actually remove that, is just as important. And then as I add the new capacity into the environment, the ability for us to dynamically balance across all the available nodes is also just as crucial. I don't want to have a bottleneck and have to manually go out and decide, do I need to move things around? Do I have to do this myself? Organizations don't have time to do that anymore. The idea is now we need the infrastructure to be balancing and do automatic balancing across what we bring in. And that's one of the biggest features with this particular offering in our portfolio that allows us to do that. So what this really does is it future-proofs your investment. With Solidfire, I don't have to worry about forklift upgrades. I can add and grow the environment dynamically as I see fit. And I don't have to do any type of migration to move this over. For a VMware environment or any virtualized environment, if I have VDIs today, I can actually your existing environment and you start to deploy desktops to those just as same as you deploy desktops to your current environment. So it's seamless insertion into the current VDI environment. If you want to do a new greenfield, next generation type of VDI environment, it's just as easy to add it to your current infrastructure and then start to deploy your workloads in that manner. I talked a little bit about the quality of service, and this is actually crucial for any of the workloads we put in the environment today, but VDI is just as crucial. The intention now is that I can actually allocate, manage, and guarantee a particular workload performance of that particular environment independent of that capacity. And what we're allowing in Solidfire is your ability to define a minimum, a maximum, and a burst. So for each volume, if I dedicate volumes to an application, I can do that per application, or I can do a series of volumes, and I can do that quality of service across those volumes for that purpose. But the idea is now I can actually guarantee that there's going to be a minimum workload performance that I can ensure is always going to be consistent to that particular workload I put in those volumes. There's also allowing a maximum, so I don't have bullies taking over the environment, and I can also allow for temporary bursts above that line. So I might have workloads all of a sudden, month-end workloads, for example, that all of a sudden are going to have a lot more heavier activity than I had during a normal work week. So those type of performance allows me to not be just capped, but now I can do temporary bursts above that maximum line for a certain period of time that you get to define when you create the volumes. These can also be dynamically adjusted. So if you decide you use a default quality of service, but you want to make some tweaks as you get closer to month end, I can go in and make those tweaks, and those will be instantaneously impacted in the environment and applied to the environment for that purpose. So let's take a look at, am I going to freeze? There we go. Let me go back. So let's take a look at what that really means. When we talk about VDI environment, oftentimes the biggest thing is around boot storms. Anytime everybody comes in, they power up their desktop. The network guys love that, as we're all trying to authenticate. And more importantly, in a virtualized environment, the VMware or the virtual admins just love that, because now you're putting straight on their servers while everybody's trying to boot up their image. Some cases, VDI, you leave those running in a non-persistent desktop environment. Other cases, you're having desktops power on. So how you deploy VDI but either way, you're going to have a boot storm at some point in time. You lose power. You're going to end up with a boot storm. What this is really doing is eliminating those noisy neighbor applications, those boot storms that are really are just workloads that are all of a sudden starting to take over the device. Quality of service allows me to put those reins in, and also at the same time ensure that I'm going to guarantee you every time the minimum IOPS service that we're guaranteeing for the service. This is really also allows us to do multiple workloads on this particular device. So I don't have to have a device dedicated just for VDI. I can put database workloads on this. I can put other virtualization workloads on this. I can put web servers on this if I so desire. So the idea is now I can actually ensure and provide a quality of service across my entire application that's running in my infrastructure and not have to worry about am I going to starve somebody, am I going to have issues, or what am I going to worry about. I talked about automation. This is really crucial around that next generation data center, the ability for us to interact via automation processes, APIs. This Solidfire provides a REST-based API. Integration with VMware is available as well, and ability to just completely manage everything through an automation process gets very crucial as we start to move toward, if you're targeting this to be a desktop as a service, or if you're looking at transforming your IT organization into a true service provider type organization that acts like a cloud provider, but you're doing that to the internal enterprise. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of case studies. We have these available actually for in a flyer format. What Solidfire has done prior to us acquiring them, we'll continue. I expect we're going to continue this process. Is we have a third-party company that goes out and interviews our customers. In this case, they interviewed their customers and asked them around their decision to purchase Solidfire and use it in their environment. These are a couple of VDI type case studies. We have other workloads that customers have leveraged as well. These give you some examples around actual customers that have leveraged Solidfire for their VDI deployment. In this case, this is a consumer product company. One of the things about these particular case studies is they do, with a third-party company, they do let the customer remain anonymous. There's one coming up. I have the actual customer name. In this case, this is one that has to remain anonymous. But this is a consumer product company. What they did with leveraging this for their VDI deployment, Solidfire helped them with reducing their data center footprint and their administration time. You can see the quote here from one of their IT managers, and the idea is now by moving to this platform, they increase the performance applications. They leverage us initially for VDI and application consolidation, and now they're looking over the next 2 years, a year or two, to move to a private cloud infrastructure as a service organization that allows them to be more dynamic to their customer business needs. The top features that they were looking at was the scale-out capability, mixed node capability, and they were really dealing with array sprawl, and they were really dealing with performance issues in their prior environment, including that forklift upgrade every 3 years that they were looking at as they refresh the environment. This particular customer had a payback on their investment in 6 to 12 months. So if you're thinking flash is too expensive for your environment today, I think it's worth revisiting. Our friends at cStor can certainly help you with that. They're very well versed in not only this technology, but in VDI, and they're very well versed with virtualized infrastructures to the point that they can certainly help you with a conversation around this. But you should see similar results for your environment. And with the next case study, this is Hosted Network. They are a service provider based in Australia, and they deliver desktop as a service. This is one of the examples I was referring to a little bit earlier. This was crucial for the development of their service. They leverage this to guarantee the performance and deliver the service at a cost-effective price that allows them to actually provide desktops as a service to a public through their hosted service offering. They are now looking at using it for other things, such as virtual private servers, and also manage hosting SAN. So they're looking to leverage the infrastructure and expand their use case of that. They were dealing with also performance issues, complexity of management, and scaling issues. So they were taking advantage of our inline efficiencies, taking advantage of the scale-out architecture that we can provide, and the automation process that allows us to provide these services in a much more expedient manner to their end users. This particular customer, on their investment, had a payback in 18 to 24 months. So again, getting back to that point around Flash is crucial now for just about any workload. It's being more crucial for the VDI deployments, and the payback is actually a lot faster on that return on investment than it may have been in either your prior look at VDI or your prior deployment of VDI in your environment. So with that, this gives you some other ideas around customers that are leveraging this technology today in their environment and how they're providing, it really scales between service providers and large enterprise. There's no restriction as to where this technology can help in your environment today. So if you're a small business, this is a solution that can certainly help in your environment. Large enterprises, that capability to scale out and performance capabilities, just as applicable. And with that, I'm going to leave it to let's talk. We really welcome a conversation after this to talk about VDI and really get into how this can help your technology and evolve your data center and your IT service to your organization today. So with that, I guess we'll open it for questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ken. At this time, we'll open it up for questions. As a reminder, if you have any questions about today's session, please post them to the questions pane in the GoToWebinar control panel. We do have a few, and we are going to squeeze them in. So let me get on with the Q&A. First question, you alluded to all-flash adoption a bit, Ken. The question is, why is all-flash adoption growing so quickly?
Thanks. It's really a convergence of several factors. It's kind of like a perfect storm of what's happening in the space today. Number one, SSDs, solid-state drives, are becoming less expensive. They are not as pricey as they once were. It's no longer $1 per IOP as they once were. It's now really it is going to be $1 per gigabyte decision. NetApp is now offering, we have 15 terabyte drives out in the market today. 32 terabyte drives are on the horizon. So we see SSD space really moving forward, and it's really driving down the price. So it's now, as I mentioned earlier, it's not a matter of should I be using flash, it's not a matter of when am I going to use flash. So we think that along with the efficiencies that have been in the storage industry for decades now, those deduplications, compression, all of that helps make the utilization rates on the storage, on the SSD drives, to be really cost effective, to where I don't have to buy a one-for-one capacity ratio given the efficiencies we have today. So given that perfect storm of price points on the media themselves, and combined with the efficiencies that the storage vendors and NetApp's been a pioneer in that, to give you more effective utilization space out of your investment, has really driven a lot of people to adopt flash quickly, and we're seeing that market grow very quickly.
Excellent, thank you. We'll squeeze a couple more questions in. Next question, is Solidfire targeted only for VDI workloads?
So no, the quick answer to that is no. As I talked about earlier, we can do multiple workloads on this. It's not a single point solution. So while it's easy to deploy, I can easily put it into a virtualized environment or put it in just for VDI. I can easily expand that or add additional workloads to that and get the ability to utilize that asset in more than just a single point solution. So it's really targeted to meet and provide you that performance, guaranteed performance part of your infrastructure that eliminates storage as basically the bottleneck in the environment. So it can be to do with multiple workloads very easily.
Excellent. Last question, we'll fit one more in. What are recommendations for user data in a VDI environment? I assume obviously in the context of Flash. Yep. Can you speak to that, Ken? Thank you.
Yeah, so user data, obviously with desktops, it comes with user data. Home directories, in Windows, it's, everything that's in my documents, my music, my video, movies, those type of things. Oftentimes what we're seeing is that being moved out of the VDI environment to make it easier to manage. I can redeploy desktops very quickly if I don't have user data housed inside those virtual disks. So conveniently, we do have another offering a lot of you may be familiar with, which is ONTAP, that can provide those native user shares and redirect those user directories over to that particular device and allow you then to protect that and make those just as storage efficient. There's an all-flash offering in that as well. When we get to user data, sometimes there's a question mark as to whether I could get away with leveraging disks for that environment. That certainly is an option. So it's something we can certainly welcome a conversation around to decide what's best for your environment. Oftentimes we're recommending that user data be seen through redirects and being placed on some type of network device via SIF shares or SMB shares for that type of thing. Which makes it effective utilization and easy for maintenance on the VDI side for the desktops themselves, and then the user data can be protected as well, particularly if you need to redeploy a desktop to a user that they have issues with. It's easier to trying to troubleshoot an issue in a desktop than it is to just say, I'm going to connect you to a new desktop, and you go from there. Their user profile then brings all of their home directories with them that's stored externally from the VDI disks, and that really makes it a lot easier for just making the VDI deployment easier to maintain and troubleshoot down the road. So that's usually our recommendation for that. And our friends at cStor are well versed with that as well, so they can certainly start those conversations, and they'll bring us in as they see fit to help with those conversations as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That concludes questions, and we are running a bit long before we let everyone go today. I will say thank you again to Ken Jarris for some great insights and timely